This is Craig Dillinger with ProLite Gear, and I just wrapped up a series of performance tests with Baselayers, and I'm going to take you through the results. I tested as many different base layers as I could get my hands on. Products that we stocked in the store, products that all of us here personally own, because I wanted to test whether a fabric performs differently when it's used and has been washed versus when it comes right out of the packaging from the factory. And I have selected a handful of the base layers that we tested and put them up here into categories so I can kind of show you how different materials perform similar to each other. There are a few anomalies that I want to point out, but as a rule I'll take you through how these perform. I also want to talk quickly about price. As a rule, your synthetic products, which are behind me here, are less expensive than your 100% merino wool products. Synthetics also tend to be more durable than your merino wool products. So I'm not going to go into that in detail because I think that's pretty well understood and pretty generally accepted. What I do want to talk about is absorption rate and dry times, because that's where we found significant differences. Before I get into that, I want to talk specifically about merino wool. We've been selling merino wool for a long time. We know that merino wool doesn't absorb water as well as synthetics do. It has to do with the way that merino wool works. A merino wool fiber, an individual fiber, is hydrophobic on the outside of that fiber, but the core of the fiber is hydrophilic. And so the way merino wool fibers work is they absorb water up through the inside of the fiber. You have to be careful with merino wool that you're not producing enough moisture or sweat from your body that you are exceeding the carrying capacity of that fabric. And you'll find that if you stretch that fabric over a hoop, you have to be careful just with how much water you put onto that fabric, because it won't absorb rapidly into that fabric, as you'll see in the video test that I'll show you here. It will drip through the fabric and create a puddle underneath it. So for these tests, I tried to keep a steady consistent 3 drops of water on each fabric. And we know that, just dropping the water onto a fabric like merino wool, that drop of water will maintain itself there. It won't just rapidly get absorbed into it. You have to kind of mechanically agitate that in, which if you're wearing a merino wool base layer next to skin, there is some mechanical agitation that occurs. You'll see in a video though that even if you mechanically agitate it, it takes some work to get water to be absorbed into merino. Water vapor gets absorbed a little bit easier than a drop of water does. So we knew that going into these tests. And we also knew that merino wool doesn't dry out nearly as quickly as synthetics. Once again, it's because the water is absorbed through the inside or the core of each individual fiber. Sometimes you don't want a base layer to dry out rapidly. If you are in a desert, you may want to dunk your base layer into a creek and get it wet and put it on and have a slow evaporative cooling process to keep you cool while you're hiking in the desert. There's over 170 different proteins in different areas of that fiber, and it's also amphoteric, meaning that it can react as both an acid or a base depending on the pH of the water that it's exposed to. So just so you know, I'm using a deionized and distilled water with a neutral pH when I'm conducting these tests. So I also wanted to test some shirts that I've worn and washed several times, because we know that the epicuticle on the merino fiber prevents water drops from being absorbed into that fiber. And we know that by washing these shirts, the process of laundering them breaks down that epicuticle layer on the merino fiber. I also wanted to look at different knits. In this case, we've got the Icebreaker GT fabric, which has a PK on it. I'll give you a close-up of that. I wanted to see if that actually made that much difference in the absorption rate or the dry time associated with that fabric weave. So these series of tests make it look like merino wool isn't that good of an option for you. And I think one of the things that's happened with merino wool in the 10 plus years that I've been involved with it is there just hasn't been a lot of evolution. Other than, they are using chemical-free treatments in the manufacturing process, which don't harm the fiber as much. But in terms of knit and blends and other things, other than the Rab Miko stuff, which we showed you, there just hasn't been a lot of evolution with merino fibers. I have been approached by another company that is doing some really innovative stuff in the merino wool space, and my initial tests into that make it look pretty exciting. So stay tuned for a future video when I may start showing you some of that information. With regard to synthetic fibers are inert. In and of themselves, they do not absorb water. Back several years ago, when synthetic fibers became good at wicking, they used an acid etch on the surface of the fiber to create a channel which caused a capillary action of any water that it was exposed to. I believe that's why they call Patagonia capilline. Capilline is in reference to that capillary action. You don't hear about people using acid etching to change the surface structure of synthetic fibers as much anymore, because they've got much better at extruding those fibers through spinnerets and creating different shapes of fibers. If you were to cut a cross section of them, you'll see that the shapes they're creating are creating very large surface areas, and that is what causes these synthetic fibers to move moisture or wick moisture so effectively and dry out so effectively. So I created a diagram to help explain the different shapes of synthetic fibers. We're looking at a cross section of two different fibers, and the fiber on the left has been crimulated to increase the surface area, creating a very large surface area, which really helps in the wicking and the dry time associated with that fiber. So I put together a quick demonstration to show you the difference between a synthetic fiber that's been etched or extruded so that it wicks moisture rapidly, compared to just a traditional round synthetic fiber that doesn't wick moisture at all. What I have here is a rash guard that's commonly worn by people when they're surfing or swimming, and we'll compare it to a Rab Eon T that has a fiber that rapidly wicks moisture. And you can see that on that rash guard, the drops of moisture are just not being absorbed into the weave or the knit, in this case, of that garment at all, whereas on the Rab Eon they're rapidly absorbed into the structure of that garment. I want to address the topic of why didn't I test products from Under Armour, Nike, Adidas, etc., some of those brands. I did take a look at products from those brands and picked up a few that I want to learn more about, but I'm going to make a separate video for those so that I can keep this video focused on products from brands in the outdoor industry. I will give you a quick teaser and let you know I will be fully testing out Under Armour's Charged Cotton, so stay tuned for that. By conducting these tests and creating this video, I'm not trying to set a laboratory situation here where I can say with precise results that fabric X is going to perform 3% better than fabric Y. What I'm trying to do is just help you understand how different categories of fabrics are going to compare relative to each other and give you a very easy to understand visual test that helps demonstrate the absorption rate and the dry times associated with different fabrics and their basic materials used in those fabrics.